energy about buying wine. Now, you know, the first year we were all kind of scared, thinking if our lots were going to sell or not. Now people are coming to you and saying that they're going to buy things. So it's pretty exciting. I think we're going to see some great results. So just enjoy, relax, tell everybody about how good the 16s are, and you know, so cheers.
I was in the investment business for 20 years.
Hydrogeologist working for a Shell Oil company.
Partying and whatever, but mainly was really into skateboarding and punk rock pretty much.
And then I was a semiconductor engineer for several years.
I was a pre-dental surfing major at Long Beach State.
But I was a geologist.
I work in the local government world.
Still a practicing attorney.
I was a college student.
I was a plant breeder.
Yes, at 28, at 29. 29 go 30. At 29, 30,000. 30,000, now go 31. At 30,000. $30,000 down for 30,000. At 30,000. $30,000 last call. You're giving her a hug. I know. 31. Give your man a hug. He might go too. $31,000 last call. One more. 32. $32,000 to go 3. 32,000. It's just one more thousand. 30. Where am I? 33. One of these thousands. 33. 34. That is just an additional $17 per month. $33,000 left side anymore. We're selling at $33,000.
I think people are very open to doing, to appreciating anything that we're doing in the Willamette Valley as far as in comparison to France. You know, we do Pinot Noir and Chardonnay beautifully here in the Willamette Valley, so there's no reason why we can't be making some very serious sparkling wines.
Oregon wine, if I'm talking about Pinot Noir, in some ways captures the best of both worlds with respect to what Pinot can be in terms of both fruit and non-fruit-like characters. Whether those are spice-driven characters or fruit-driven, you get elements of both. It offers a lot in terms of just fruit intensity and freshness. But the viticulture and the growing regime here is such that it doesn't get too ripe. It gets ripe enough. And the wines maintain just this high degree of freshness, great finesse, great balance. They're just terrific. It's a terrific place to be a wine grower for a Pinot Noir.
And that's one of the things I think that separates Oregon a little bit when you go wine tasting versus other areas in the United States, is that a lot of the times, you know, one of us is there, owner, winemaker, general manager. You're going to see them in the tasting room and you get a chance to converse with them, which, you know, in big, gigantic wineries, a lot of times you don't get that opportunity.
20 vintages now for Siduri. Yeah, throughout my time, worked on many projects, but I've always worked for Siduri since 2000, actually. I started in 1998, first vintage, moved out to California from the state of Wisconsin. Knew nothing about wine, but quickly fell in love with the process when I was digging out tanks like this behind me on my first vintage. My first job was at a winery called La Crema at the time. And yeah, I met the cellar master at a wedding of all places. And he said, "Come work for me, it sucks, but you'll make a lot of money." Turned out it didn't suck. I actually really loved it and was smitten with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay from the very beginning. So
it's definitely the people. I think the climate that we have here is challenging to grow and ripen Pinot Noir in. So you need people who are a little bit more humble, also good sense of humor. And I think those two things always make a tasting in Oregon that much more fun. I mean, the climate is very conducive to growing world-class quality Pinot Noir, but it's the people, I think, that make it special.
Yeah, so Child's Play, it's a reflection, I guess, of one of my personal bents, which is the double entendre. And so I love double meaning terms, and so Child's Play is a combination. So here on this label, you can see that there's some very pretty, colorful artwork. We have 4 offerings in the Child's Play lineup, each one of them being a different offering and capitalizing or I say highlighting a different piece of art. So my 2 young daughters are the artists, and so it's them playing around, and then as winemakers we have an opportunity to play around as well. So that's kind of the double meaning behind Child's Play.
You know, it was more about the production. I drank wine, I learned more about it, and thought that it might be a really good sort of cross-section of science and the making of something, the artisanship of making something. It underpins winemaking. I mean, as floofy as we want to be about the magic of winemaking, you still need to know basic chemistry. You know, that's what you're doing. The fermentation is a critical part of winemaking, and you have to understand how it all happens and how you can avoid potential mistakes and how you can make it as positive, as good as it can be. I chose the right career.
Well, when we decided to grow wine, that was our original idea. We looked around the Napa Valley because that's where we lived and that's what we knew, but we didn't have whatever it was, $200,000 to buy an acre of Cabernet. You know, the pizzas weren't that good. So we came up to Oregon and absolutely loved it. I actually really love the weather because I like seasons. We have beautiful seasons, we have summers, we have winters, we have falls that are glorious, and springs, and we have rain, and we have water, and we have air, and it's a really good wine community too. We all get along really well together. It's fun.
That I hang out with a bunch of great winemakers and try to give them as much support as I can, both in the vineyard and at the winery.
So your job is to sort of oversee.
I oversee, encourage, and throw things against the wall to see what sticks.
So I guess there's a lot of grapes stuck on the wall of the winery somewhere.
It gets messy sometimes, exactly.
We're making about 850 cases a year now, primarily Pinot Noir. We do Rosé, Pinot Noir, and a couple others, Chardonnay and Pinot Gris, but primarily Pinot Noir. It's family owned, family run. I married one of the owners. Never marry a winemaker. You end up doing a lot of work.
So our vineyard was originally planted in 1989. It was my parents that started the vineyard, and then didn't start making wine under their own label until '96. So we slowly grew from there and still only use 25% of the fruit from Shea Vineyard for our own production. The rest we sell to about 20 different wineries. There's about 25,000 cases coming off of the vineyard each year.
So we're here with David Obrecht, and I'm going to try and say the name Schunatal.
Very good. You did very well.
Should I admit I have a cue card in front of me?
No, you did very well. You listened well.
I like you, David. You're a good guy.
This is a very new operation. The first time at this event, and we're looking forward to the opportunity to be here and showcase our wines. We try to approach the winemaking process with minimal intervention in the process at all. Native yeast, if we don't have to inoculate, we don't inoculate. We watch our fermenters along the way and pay close attention to it, and at the end we hope that the grapes and the vineyard and everything else showcases the wine that's in the bottle.
I think it's fair to say that the philosophy here is that a rising tide floats all boats, and so it's a joy to be able to say, hey, I've got this problem, and reach out to someone else and they'll have had the same problem and give you ideas on how to solve it. So that's really nice.
Growing grapes and making wine is a farming pursuit, but at the same time, it's an intellectual pursuit and a scientific pursuit, and we get to come together at events like this and celebrate that.
I think that as a winemaker, there's a few events that we're really proud to participate in, and having a wine that's individualistic from our other portfolio is important for the consumer. It's a fun project for us to participate in. Lynn and I, who's the founding winemaker for Penarash, really enjoy putting these auction lots together.
Prince Hill is a vineyard that Dick Erath planted many years ago, and there was a story about some clones that a friend of his brought cuttings from Clos de Vougeot in Burgundy. Dick took them to the university to get them tested. They got lost for about 20 years, and the professor who retired found the certification in his desk as he was cleaning things out, called Dick and said, we've cleaned up these clones for you. Do you want to come pick them up? So he did, planted them in 2000. It's now called Clone 95, or the Erath clone, and that's what our auction lot is made of. It's pretty rare. Since then, Dick has sold the vineyard to another concern, and so there might only be 2 vintages of this. We're not sure at this point. So it's a pretty rare thing from one of the legends of the Oregon wine industry, Dick Erath.
I decided at a young age that I was going to become a winemaker. There was a women's conference when I was 13 years old, and it was every stereotypical job you could get typecast into, with the exception of enologist. And the fact that my teacher didn't know what an enologist was made it even more appealing. I march to the beat of my own drums, so I like to do what I want to do, and I don't like being told that everybody else is doing it, so therefore you should do it.
This is the auction lot is the first vintage that I got to work on, and it's fantastic. So great vintage to come in on.
So literally, never thought I would have this sort of chance, and to work with established vines from 73, 84, 2000 in the Dundee Hills is, I'm excited about the opportunity.
I'm very big into Riesling. Riesling's the white muse, Pinot Noir's the red muse. It's not the easiest cellar in the world. I like wines of purity and precision. So for me, Riesling is the white wine that meets that criteria. Pinot Noir is the red wine that meets that criteria. So those for me are the 2 grapes that I have to work with, and there are other white grapes that I like to work with.
I started making wine in 2003 in Coeur d'Alene cellars in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I was the ripe old age of 19 years old.
Was it legal to be a winemaker at that age?
Well, it was legal to taste, I think, but not really, I guess. No, it wasn't.
I have been the winemaker for 10 years. I'm also the vineyard manager. So I joined the project back in 2008, which was their first vintage. So I'm the only winemaker to date.
That's kind of an honor to be able to say you've been with a winery that long.
It is, yes. This was a from the ground up project. So this was, developing vineyards, building a winery, and building the brand. So it has been a sort of an exploration and quite an endeavor for sure. But we are now almost 60 acres planted, and at least coming to the end of that phase of the project.
It is a broad title. The best I could explain is it's the boots on the ground. I really oversee the wines in the cellar. I care for the wines to make sure that they remain stable with their chemistry through their entire ferment, through secondary fermentation, and just through stillage. So it's a very involved job. I have to keep track of the barrels pretty closely.
Talking about, you're originally from Wisconsin.
Well, I was born there and then moved west at a tender age and lived being a geologist until about 20 years ago back in the Rocky Mountain area, Colorado and Wyoming, and then started thinking about wine and rocks, and pretty soon I moved further west, and my wife and I started Carabella Vineyard, some really nice volcanic soils about 20 years ago.
I was the chairman of the first auction, so this is now in its 3rd year, so now I have the stress-free job of just enjoying and pouring wine for people. I'm part of the original committee that came up with the idea for the auction. We work under the Willamette Valley Wineries Association. And we have a great group of community here that have really dreamed up this great idea of bringing some of the best buyers from around the world into our valley to showcase some of the best wines that we make. Real special one-off small bottlings that really highlight the vintage. I mean, there's no other opportunity to taste the vintage at an early stage like this in Oregon other than this auction.
Beaufrère refers to the original partnership between Michael Etzel, our founding owner, and his brother-in-law. The French idiom is Beaufrère, Robert Parker Jr. When they began the winery about 30 years ago, Robert was the original investor, and today we have a third partner with Champagne Henriot. And at this point, we're pretty much business as usual at our Wild Pirate ship. Essentially, we're making Pinot Noir, a little bit of Chardonnay, and trying to keep it all in the glass. There's not much else for us to brag about except for the wine.
Joe Dobbs is our founder. He started Dobbs Family Estate and Wine by Joe back in 2002. Dobbs Family Estate is our high-end luxury tier, and then Wine by Joe is for your everyday average consumer, but we make not your average Joe wines.
Well, we started in '71 buying a piece of property, but we were the, 7th or 8th vineyard planting and the 8th or 9th winery. But obviously we wouldn't know that there would be 900 plus wineries in Oregon and 700 plus in the Willamette Valley when we started. I mean, you just couldn't understand what our nominal and very modest success would bring. American fine wine really started to be put on the map in the 60s. It's not that there wasn't fine wine before, and there certainly were the BVs of the world and the Inglenooks and so forth, but the idea that America would make great wine trying to be at the level of the French, let's say, nobody would have had the guts to say something like that until Mondavi said it. And not that we were looking to Robert Mondavi to set our future for us, but it resonated, I think, with all of us, not just in Oregon, but all up and down the West Coast and probably beyond, that we should not be just trying to make money or just experimenting with grapevines. We should be trying to make great wine. And one of the great things about the Willamette Valley is that from the beginning, our focus was great wine.